The Void Sector, an uncharted, war-torn region of deep space rife with drifting wrecks, was not a place for the faint of heart. In this far future where humanity and multiple alien species coexisted under an uneasy truce, only the most hardened salvage pilots ventured into its depths. Peter Reed was one such pilot, a seasoned salvager who preferred solitude to company. He lived aboard his small vessel, the Auriga. The ship, designed specifically for deep space scavenging, had been his home for the better part of a decade. Its cramped quarters suited him fine. He had no need for luxuries or space when it was just him against the void. His routine was simple: jump into derelict ships, recover useful tech, sell at distant outposts. Day-to-day life was isolated, governed by salvage guild protocols that kept pilots like him safe. Or at least, that was the idea. Peter leaned back in his pilot's chair, watching the sweeping nebula visible on the horizon. According to Void lore, those beautiful, swirling clouds hid anomalies that could swallow ships whole. Many salvagers insisted nothing good ever emerged from those clouds. Peter didn't put much stock in tales. He trusted his scanners more than ghost stories. Still, when a new, unfamiliar distress beacon appeared on his sensors, one unlike any salvage signature he'd encountered before, he felt a familiar tightness in his chest. "Not my problem," he muttered to himself, fingers dancing across the control panel. But even as he said it, memories of his family flashed unbidden. Their faces during that last video call before the border skirmish took them. Their voices, telling him to be careful out there in the deep black. He'd kept his emotional distance from everyone since then. Attachments meant liabilities. Caring meant pain. And yet, his eyes kept returning to the strange signal pattern. Guild protocol demanded logging and reporting the beacon, then moving on. But something about this particular signal tugged at him. He couldn't explain the pull he felt. Intuition, perhaps, or something more. Peter sighed, adjusting his course. "This is against regulations," he reminded himself, even as his fingers input the new coordinates. And probably suicide. But he was already moving toward the signal, the Auriga's engines humming as they pushed him deeper into the Void Sector. His scanners revealed a derelict vessel, half buried in a drifting asteroid field. The ship's design was unlike anything in his database, sleek, almost organic in its curves, with no visible propulsion system. More concerning were the minimal life signs his equipment detected. Something aboard was alive, but barely. Docking proved challenging. The strange vessel's ports weren't compatible with standard human or known alien configurations. Peter improvised, using magnetic clamps to secure the Auriga to the hull. With a shuddering clank, the ships joined, and he prepared for entry. The airlock cycled, and Peter stepped into the derelict, environment suit sealed against potential contaminants. Interior corridors were illuminated only by flickering emergency lights that cast long, dancing shadows. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the echo of his footsteps and the soft hiss of his suit's air recyclers. The vessel's layout defied logic. Corridors seemed to bend in impossible ways. Rooms appeared larger inside than their exterior dimensions should allow. As he moved deeper, the walls themselves seemed to pulse with faint light, revealing intricate, shifting glyphs that activated at his approach. His scanner led him toward the life sign, deeper into the ship's mysterious core. Finally, he reached what appeared to be a central chamber. The doors, if they could be called that, parted silently as he approached, revealing a vast, cathedral-like space dominated by a raised crystalline platform. And there, curled upon it, lay a massive cosmic wolf. Its silver-gray fur seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. Its form was wolf-like, but with elongated limbs and a tail that seemed to fade into wisps of starlight at its tip. The creature was impossibly large, the size of a small shuttle. Yet, as Peter's suit sensors confirmed, it was alive. Barely. The wolf's breathing was shallow, its massive ribcage rising and falling with painful slowness. Peter's scanner revealed no wounds, no physical trauma, but its vital signs were fading rapidly. It was starving. The realization hit Peter suddenly. This creature, whatever it was dying of hunger. He stepped closer, and the chamber's walls brightened, the glyphs pulsing more intensely. The wolf made no move to attack, remaining curled on the platform, eyes closed. Peter hesitated. Guild protocol was clear. Unknown alien life forms were to be reported, not approached. Feeding them was expressly prohibited. But something about the creature's helplessness struck a chord in him. He rummaged through his suit's storage compartments. He had emergency rations, nutrient-dense paste designed to sustain human metabolism in survival situations. Would it help an alien creature? He had no idea. But offering it meant endangering his own supplies, his own survival if he became stranded. This is idiotic, he told himself, even as he unsealed a ration pack. Completely against regulations. He approached slowly, nutrient paste in hand. The wolf's massive head suddenly lifted, and its eyes snapped open, revealing depths that seemed to contain galaxies. Intelligence shone in those eyes, an ancient, knowing cognition that froze Peter in place. They stared at each other for a long, tense moment. Then, with deliberate slowness, Peter extended the ration pack. The wolf's gaze flicked to it, then back to Peter's face. A moment of silent recognition passed between them. Then, with careful movements, the wolf leaned forward and accepted the offering. As the creature consumed the paste, something extraordinary began to happen. The glyphs on the chamber walls brightened dramatically, pulsing in rhythmic patterns. The crystalline platform beneath the wolf began to glow with intense, blue-white light. Energy seemed to flow up from the platform, through the wolf's body, making its fur shimmer and spark. Peter tried to step back, but found himself paralyzed, bound by some invisible force to the spot. The wolf's form began to blur, to shimmer and shift. Light overwhelmed the chamber, so bright that Peter's suit automatically darkened his visor. When the light faded and his vision cleared, the wolf was gone. In its place stood a humanoid figure, tall, lithe, with luminous silver hair that floated as if suspended in water. Her features were almost human, but with elongated ears that tapered to points and eyes that retained the galaxy-deep cognition of the wolf. Her skin had a faint silver sheen, and she wore what appeared to be armor made of an unknown crystalline material that shifted colors with her movements. She swayed slightly, clearly weakened, and Peter found himself stepping forward to steady her before he could think. His hands caught her shoulders, and an electric jolt ran through him at the contact. Not painful, but intense, like a current passing between them. "You fed me," she said, her voice melodic and strange, with harmonics that seemed to echo in Peter's mind rather than his ears. "You brought life when death seemed certain." "What are you?" Peter managed to ask, his own voice sounding flat and ordinary after hers. "I am Rhea of the Valeth," she replied, straightening her posture with visible effort. "We are the guardians of cosmic passages, the watchers between realms. And now, I am bound to you, human savior." "Bound? What is that?" Peter's question was cut short by a sudden, violent shudder that ran through the ship. Alarms began to sound, a wailing, discordant noise, unlike any emergency system he'd heard before. Rhea's face hardened. "They've found us. The Dominion has tracked my energy signature." "The Dominion? What's happening?" Peter demanded. But Rhea was already moving, her graceful form gliding toward one of the chamber's walls. She pressed her palm against a constellation of glyphs, and a viewing port opened, revealing the star-speckled void outside. 3 massive warships had dropped out of hyperspace nearby, their sleek, predatory forms bristling with weapons. Even to Peter's untrained eye, they looked menacing, built for pursuit and destruction rather than exploration or defense. Dominion war cruisers, Rhea explained, her voice tight. They hunt my kind to extinction. The energy flare from my transformation would have been visible across half the sector. Another impact rocked the derelict ship. Boarding parties, Peter realized with a chill. We need to go, he said, decision made instantly. My ship's docked on the outer hull, if we can reach it. Yes, Rhea agreed, already moving toward the chamber exit. Lead the way, bonded one. Peter wanted to question what she meant by bonded, but survival took precedence. They raced through the twisting corridors, and Peter was startled to realize he somehow knew which turns to take, which passages to avoid, despite the ship's confusing layout. It was as if some sixth sense guided him, or as if someone else's knowledge overlaid his own. They reached the airlock just as the first sounds of Dominion soldiers echoed from deeper in the ship. Peter cycled the lock, and they crossed to the Auriga. As the ship's door sealed behind them, Peter raced to the controls. "Strap in," he ordered, then realized he had no idea if Rhea would understand the concept. To his surprise, she moved confidently to the co-pilot seat, securing herself as if she'd done it 100 times. "Disengage magnetic clamps on my mark," she said, her hands moving over the control panel with unexpected familiarity. Her fingers danced across interfaces designed for human use, making adjustments to systems Peter hadn't even realized could be modified. "How are you?" "The bond," she explained quickly. "I can access your knowledge, and you mine. It is the way of the Valeth symbiosis." Before Peter could process this, the ship's sensors blared warnings. "Dominion cruisers locking weapons," Rhea announced. "Clamps disengaged," Peter responded, firing the Auriga's thrusters. The small ship pulled away from the derelict, just as energy beams sliced through the space they'd occupied moments before. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic jumble of spinning rocks, ranging from car-sized to massive chunks larger than space stations. Navigating it would be suicidal under normal circumstances. "Head straight in," Rhea urged. "They won't be able to track us through the electromagnetic disturbances." Peter didn't question her. Some deep instinct told him to trust her judgment. He gunned the engines, sending the Auriga plunging into the asteroid field. Almost immediately, his sensors became unreliable, readings jumping and flickering as cosmic radiation interfered with the equipment. But instead of the blind panic he expected, Peter found himself oddly calm. His reactions seemed faster, his spatial awareness sharper. He could somehow sense the massive rocks tumbling through space around them, anticipating their movements before his eyes could track them. "Left," Rhea said quietly, and Peter banked the ship sharply, just as a massive asteroid tumbled through the space they would have occupied. "Now dive." The Auriga responded to his touch like never before. It was as if the ship itself had become an extension of his body, reacting to his thoughts almost before his hands moved the controls. Behind them, the Dominion cruisers attempted to follow. They were larger, less maneuverable, and clearly not designed for the close-quarters navigation the asteroid field demanded. "There," Rhea pointed to a particularly dense cluster of rocks. "Cut engines and drift." Peter complied, shutting down the Auriga's main thrusters and letting momentum carry them into the shadow of a massive, slowly rotating asteroid. They watched on the rear view screen as the lead Dominion cruiser attempted to follow their trajectory. It miscalculated. A smaller, fast-moving asteroid clipped its port stabilizer, sending it into a spin. The cruiser crashed into a larger rock, its hull crumpling under the impact. A secondary explosion blossomed from its core, the shockwave catching a second cruiser and damaging its weapons array. "Two down," Peter murmured, feeling no satisfaction at the destruction, only grim relief. "More will come," Rhea said softly. "Vex never gives up a hunt." "Vex?" "Emperor Vex Corin, leader of the Dominion. He has made it his life's mission to eradicate my kind. Her star-flecked eyes turned to Peter. There is much you need to know, Bonded One. But first, we must reach safety. Peter nodded, firing up the engines again. Where to? Rhea's expression was grim. Deep space, beyond the nebula. I'll direct you to coordinates where we might find allies, if any of my people still survive. As they navigated the remainder of the asteroid field, Peter stole glances at his alien passenger. She sat straight in her seat, profile regal despite her obvious exhaustion. The strange bond she'd mentioned, he could feel it now, a warm pulse in his chest, a subtle awareness of her emotions and thoughts hovering just below the surface of his consciousness. I can feel you, he said quietly. In my mind. And you, she replied. The feeding ritual triggered the bonding symbiosis. It is rare, sacred among my people, a bond that transcends species, linking mind to mind, heart to heart. I didn't agree to this, Peter pointed out, though without real anger. Rhea turned those galaxy-deep eyes on him. No, and for that, I am sorry. But without the bond, I would have perished. And you would never have escaped the Dominion ships. Our strengths are now shared, our weaknesses balanced. Peter wanted to argue further, but the truth of her words resonated within him. His piloting skills had been enhanced beyond anything he'd experienced before. And there was something else, a sense of wholeness he hadn't felt since losing his family, as if a void he'd carried for years had begun to fill. They cleared the asteroid field, and Peter set course for the coordinates Rhea provided. As the Auriga streaked through empty space, Rhea's posture finally relaxed. You should rest, Peter suggested, noticing the subtle signs of her exhaustion. There's a bunk in the back. She shook her head. First, you deserve answers. And so, as the Auriga sped through the darkness between stars, Rhea began to explain. The Valith were an ancient race, cosmic lupine beings with the ability to traverse dimensions. For millennia, they had acted as guardians of what Rhea called the thin places, points where realities touched, where energies from different dimensions might bleed through. The Dominion, a vast galactic empire led by Emperor Vex Corrin, had discovered that Valith energy could be harnessed as a weapon. They began hunting the Valith, capturing and experimenting on them. Those who resisted were killed. Those who surrendered faced a fate worse than death, having their very essence drained to power Dominion warships and weapons. We are few now, Rhea said, her voice soft with grief. Scattered across the stars, hiding in places between spaces. I was on a mission to find others of my kind when my ship was damaged in an asteroid collision. I had been trapped for weeks, my energy fading, when you found me. Peter listened intently, trying to absorb the scope of what she described. And this bond between us, it's permanent. It is. Among my people, such bonds were formed only after great consideration, with sacred rituals and preparations. But in dire circumstances, she looked away. I had no choice. My life force was nearly extinguished. Your act of compassion created the connection, and my transformation sealed it. Peter was silent for a long moment, processing. Finally, he asked, what does it mean for us, practically speaking, besides the enhanced abilities I've already noticed? Rhea's expression softened slightly. It means we are stronger together than apart. Your senses will continue to sharpen. My ability to manipulate energy will grow. We will develop a deeper awareness of each other's thoughts and feelings, though privacy is still possible with practice. She hesitated, then added, there is one more thing you should know. Her eyes met his, serious and intense. The Dominion didn't find us by accident. What do you mean? Peter Reed, there is something unique about you, about your genetic structure. I sensed it the moment our minds connected. She leaned forward, You were created for this. Created? I wasn't created. I was born. I had parents. A family. Yes. But were they scientists? Working on classified projects? Perhaps. Peter stared at her, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. His parents had been geneticists, working for a research division of what he'd always believed was a medical corporation. They never discussed their work in detail. Security protocols, they'd said. The Dominion has been attempting to engineer humans capable of bonding with Valeth for decades. Rhea continued gently. They want to create the perfect hunters, beings who can track and capture my kind using our own abilities against us. That's impossible, Peter whispered. But even as he said it, doubts crept in. His uncanny aptitude for finding valuable salvage in the void, his comfort in deep space when others went mad from isolation, his inexplicable survival of accidents that should have killed him. Your parents, Rhea said. They must have discovered the truth and rebelled against it. Perhaps they attempted to hide you, to give you a normal life. Her expression was compassionate. The accident that killed them, was it truly an accident? The border skirmish. A random attack. He'd always believed. But what if it hadn't been random at all? What if it had been targeted? A way to eliminate scientists who knew too much, who had hidden a valuable asset. What if it had been a way to ensure Peter would have no one to tell him the truth about his origins? I was designed as a weapon against your people, he said flatly. You were designed, Rhea corrected. But you chose compassion when you found me dying. You chose to help rather than harm. Whatever the Dominion intended, your actions were your own. Before Peter could respond, alarms blared throughout the Auriga. A massive Dominion command ship had appeared on long-range sensors, having tracked them despite their evasive maneuvers. How did they find us so quickly? Peter demanded, hands flying over the controls. They're tracking your signature now, not just mine, Rhea explained grimly. Once bonded, we emit a unique energy pattern, one they've likely been programmed to detect. The massive command ship launched smaller pursuit craft, sleek, deadly hunters that rapidly closed the distance to the Auriga. Peter pushed the engines to maximum, but knew they couldn't outrun their pursuers indefinitely. We need options, he said, scanning the star charts. Rhea's expression was grave. There is one possibility, the Resistance. Resistance? A network of bonded pairs, humans and Valeth working together against the Dominion, if any still live. She placed her hand on the navigation console, and suddenly, new coordinates appeared, a location deep within the nebula they'd been avoiding. That's suicide, Peter objected. The nebula's gravitational anomalies will tear us apart. Not with our combined abilities, Rhea insisted. The bond will allow us to navigate what others cannot. It's our only chance. Peter hesitated only a moment before altering course. The Auriga plunged toward the swirling, luminous clouds of the nebula, the Dominion pursuit craft closing in behind them. As they entered the nebula's outer boundaries, sensors began to fail. Static crackled across communication channels. The ship shuddered as gravitational eddies pulled at its hull. But Peter found that Rhea was right, somehow. He could sense the safe passages, the stable currents within the chaos. And through their bond, Rhea channeled energy to reinforce the Auriga's shields where they were most needed. Still, the Dominion ships followed, their superior technology allowing them to track the Auriga despite the interference. One pursuit craft closed to firing range, energy weapons charging. Brace, Peter called, attempting evasive maneuvers. But in the dense nebula, the Auriga's mobility was limited. The first shot grazed their shields, sending cascading failures through multiple systems. The second hit squarely on the engine housing, reducing their speed by half. Warning lights flashed across the console as life support began to fail. We can't outrun them anymore, Peter said grimly, scanning for options. Rhea placed her hand on his arm, and he felt a surge of energy flow through the contact. "Together," she said simply. Understanding flowed through the bond. Peter cut the engines entirely, letting the Auriga drift into a particularly dense cloud of cosmic dust. Rhea closed her eyes, concentrating, and suddenly, the energy emissions from the ship changed, becoming chaotic, indistinguishable from the nebula's natural radiation. The pursuing Dominion ships hesitated, their sensors confused by the altered signature. They began a search pattern, moving away from the Auriga's actual position. "It won't fool them for long," Rhea whispered, strain evident in her voice. "It doesn't need to," Peter replied, his attention caught by a new signal, faint, using an encrypted frequency he'd never encountered before. "Someone's broadcasting to us." A voice crackled through the comm system. "Bonded pair, identify yourselves." Peter looked to Rhea, who nodded encouragingly. "This is Peter Reed of the salvage vessel Auriga. I have Rhea of the Valeth with me. We're being pursued by Dominion forces." A pause, then, "Coordinates incoming. Follow precisely. Any deviation will be considered hostile intent." A navigation pathway appeared on their screens, a complex route through the nebula's dangers that would have been impossible to calculate without intimate knowledge of its currents and anomalies. "Can we trust them?" Peter asked Rhea quietly. "We have little choice," she replied. "But yes, I believe this is the Resistance." Peter engaged the engines at minimal power, following the provided route. The Dominion ships, still searching where they'd last detected the Auriga, fell behind. The nebula grew denser around them, visibility reduced to almost nothing. Only the navigation pathway kept them on course as they twisted through gravitational eddies and radiation storms that would have destroyed an unguided vessel. Finally, they emerged into a relatively clear pocket within the nebula and gasped at what they saw. A massive space station hung suspended in the void, built into what appeared to be the remnants of a collapsed star. Its gravity well, which should have destroyed anything nearby, had somehow been harnessed, creating a perfect hiding place. No conventional sensors would detect anything here but the star remnant's overwhelming signature. "The last haven," Rhea breathed, awe in her voice. "I thought it was just a legend." The station's docking bay opened, and tractor beams gently guided the damaged Auriga inside. As the bay repressurized, Peter saw figures waiting for them, humans and beings similar to Rhea, standing side by side. "Ready?" he asked her. Rhea's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "Together," she reminded him. They exited the Auriga to find themselves surrounded by what could only be the Resistance, bonded pairs of humans and Valeth, each displaying the same subtle coordination, the same awareness of each other that Peter and Rhea were beginning to develop. One pair stepped forward, a woman with a cybernetic eye, clearly a captain by her bearing, and beside her, a male Valeth with deep blue-black fur in his partially transformed state. "I am Captain Torres," the woman said. "This is Kale, my bonded. Welcome to Last Haven, or what remains of it." Peter and Rhea were escorted deep into the station, passing through corridors bustling with activity. Humans and Valeth worked together seamlessly, maintaining systems, coordinating operations, treating wounded. It was a stark contrast to the segregated, hierarchical societies Peter had encountered across human and alien worlds. They were brought to a large, circular chamber that appeared to be a command center. Maps of various sectors floated as holograms in the air, tracking Dominion fleet movements. And at the center stood a female Valeth, unlike any Peter had seen. Ancient, bearing subtle scars of many battles. Her silver fur streaked with black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Seraphine," Rhea whispered, dropping immediately to one knee. Peter felt the wave of reverence through their bond and found himself kneeling as well, though he didn't understand why. The elder Huntress approached them, her movements possessing an otherworldly grace despite her obvious age. "Rise," she said, her voice resonating on multiple harmonics that made Peter's skin tingle. "We have little time for formalities." As they stood, Seraphine circled them slowly, studying their bond with ancient eyes that seemed to see beyond physical reality. "A new bonding," she observed. "Crude, forced by circumstance rather than choice, and yet surprisingly strong." Her gaze fixed on Peter. "And you bear their mark." "He was engineered by the Dominion," Rhea explained. "But he chose compassion over programming. He saved me when I was dying." Seraphine nodded slowly. "The Dominion has hunted us for generations, seeking to harness our energy, to twist our bonds to their purpose. But you—" She placed a clawed hand on Peter's shoulder, and he felt a jolt of energy far more powerful than anything he'd experienced with Rhea. "You may be the key we have sought." "I don't understand," Peter said. "The Dominion created you to hunt us." "Yes. But in doing so, they created the perfect conduit for our most powerful abilities." Seraphine's expression was grim. "And now, they will stop at nothing to recapture you both." Captain Torres stepped forward. "We've confirmed a Dominion command ship has entered the sector, accompanied by a full battle fleet. They're methodically searching the nebula. It's only a matter of time before they find us." "Then we must strike first," Seraphine decided. "The moment we've prepared for has arrived sooner than expected, but we are ready." She gestured, and a holographic projection of a massive space station appeared in the center of the room. "Nexus Station," Torres explained. "The central communications hub for the entire Dominion military. Every order, every fleet movement, every strategic decision passes through its systems." Kale, her Valeth partner, continued. "We've developed a plan to infiltrate the station and sever those communications, creating confusion throughout Dominion forces and revealing the location of their hidden shipyards and bases to resistance cells across the galaxy." "But such a critical facility is heavily guarded," Rhea pointed out. "Precisely," Seraphine agreed, "which is why no direct assault could succeed. We need to lure Emperor Vex himself to the station, to force him to respond personally to a crisis only he has authorization to resolve." "And how do we do that?" Peter asked. Seraphine's gaze was steady. "By making him believe his perfect weapon, you, Peter Reed, has returned to his control and is ready to betray us all." The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Using the Auriga's transponder codes, which the Dominion had already tracked, Peter would approach Nexus Station under the guise of a defector, claiming to have discovered his true purpose and wanting to deliver Rhea to Dominion forces. Meanwhile, two other bonded pairs would infiltrate the station disguised as maintenance workers. Once inside, Peter would need to override station protocols and sever comlinks using the specialized access his genetic code should provide. Rhea would neutralize security systems from inside, while the other teams planted devices to broadcast the station's command codes to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. The plan hinged on Emperor Vex's well-known paranoia, his insistence that only he could handle certain crisis situations, particularly those involving Valeth technology. If they could convince him that Peter had brought valuable intelligence about the resistance, his ego would demand he come in person. "This is suicide," Peter said bluntly after hearing the details. "Perhaps," Seraphine acknowledged. "But if we succeed, we cripple the Dominion's ability to coordinate their forces. We expose their secret operations to 100 worlds they've subjugated. We give hope to those who have none." Peter looked at Rhea, feeling her emotions through their bond: determination, fear, and a fierce hope that overwhelmed everything else. "Your choice must be your own," she told him softly. "The bond does not command, it only connects." Peter thought of his parents, scientists who had apparently died to give him freedom from the destiny the Dominion had engineered for him. He thought of Rhea, starving and alone when he found her. And he thought of the bonded pairs he'd seen throughout Last Haven, humans and Valeth working together, finding strength in unity rather than domination. "I'll do it," he said finally. "But we'll need to modify the Auriga. Make it convincing that I've turned against the resistance." The preparations took less than a day. The Auriga was outfitted with a false data core containing convincing, but ultimately misleading information about resistance operations. Peter and Rhea practiced mental shielding techniques with Seraphine, learning to conceal certain thoughts and emotions from detection by Dominion psychics. As they worked, Peter learned more about the bond from other pairs. Jake and Zara, veteran engineers who handled sensor arrays at the Resistance base, showed him how their deep bond enabled telepathic troubleshooting, finishing each other's calculations, sensing structural weaknesses through shared perception. "The bond grows stronger with time," Jake explained, as they calibrated the Auriga's transponder. "Zara and I have been connected for 15 years. Sometimes, I forget where her thoughts end and mine begin." "Is that difficult?" Peter asked, still uncomfortable with the intimacy of his connection to Rhea. Jake smiled, glancing at his Valeth partner across the room. "It was, at first. Privacy seems important until you realize that true understanding is worth more than secrets." Before they departed, Seraphine took Peter aside for a final counsel. "The Dominion will attempt to activate latent programming in your genetic structure," she warned. "They will try to turn you against Rhea, against yourself. Remember that whatever they built into your DNA, your soul remains your own." Peter nodded, the weight of responsibility settling heavy on his shoulders. "And if we fail?" Seraphine's ancient eyes held his. "Then others will rise after you. The resistance continues, even if individuals fall. But I do not believe you will fail." Peter Reed. "Your bond with Rhea is unusual, formed from genuine compassion rather than calculation. Such connections have power beyond Dominion understanding." As they prepared to board the Auriga, Rhea approached Peter, her silver hair shimmering in the bay's dim lighting. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "I am grateful our paths crossed. You gave me life when all seemed lost. Now we fight for something greater than ourselves." Peter felt the warm pulse of their bond in his chest, a steady rhythm that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. "Together," he reminded her, echoing her earlier words. "Together," she agreed, her galaxy-deep eyes reflecting starlight. The Auriga departed Last Haven, leaving the nebula's protection and broadcasting the carefully crafted transponder signal that would announce Peter's supposed defection. As they approached Dominion-controlled space, tension filled the small ship's cabin. "Incoming transmission," Peter announced as the console lit up with an encrypted signal. A cold, precise voice filled the cabin. "Genetic profile ID 7329. You are instructed to proceed to coordinates being transmitted. Any deviation will result in immediate termination." "They're using my code, not my name," Peter noted grimly. "To them, I'm just an experiment." "Hold to the plan," Rhea reminded him softly. "Remember what Seraphine taught us about shielding our thoughts." The coordinates led them to a Dominion checkpoint station, a brutally efficient structure bristling with weapons arrays and scanner technology. The Auriga was guided into a docking bay where armed troops waited, weapons trained on the airlock. Peter stepped out first, hands raised in surrender. Rhea followed, feigning weakness and defeat, her wrists bound with restraints that were actually designed to enhance her energy manipulation abilities rather than contain them. They were separated immediately. Rhea taken to a detention level, Peter escorted to an interrogation chamber. The room was clinically white, featureless except for a single chair bolted to the floor and a large viewing screen on one wall. A tall, gaunt human in a Dominion uniform entered. His insignia marked him as high-ranking, though not the Emperor himself. "Asset 7329, he began without preamble. "Preliminary scans confirm your genetic profile. You will now undergo reconditioning to purge corrupted behavioral patterns. I don't need reconditioning, Peter replied, sticking to their rehearsed script. I've discovered my true purpose. The Valeth female can lead you to others. I've brought her and information about their main base. The officer studied him coldly. Your alleged defection is conveniently timed. Emperor Vex will make the final determination of your sincerity. Emperor Vex is coming here? Peter asked, allowing appropriate nervousness to color his tone. Your created existence is of particular interest to him, the officer confirmed. In the meantime, you will provide all data on the resistance immediately. Peter was subjected to hours of questioning, walking a careful line between appearing cooperative and withholding crucial information that only Emperor Vex himself should hear. Meanwhile, through their bond, he could sense Rhea being moved from the detention level to a transport vessel. Everything was proceeding according to plan. 16 hours later, Peter was brought to the docking bay of Nexus Station, an immense structure of concentric rings intersected by long corridors, with dozens of docking ports for ships of all sizes. The communication hub of the entire Dominion military machine. It represented both the target of their mission and the greatest danger they faced. As he was escorted through security checkpoints, Peter noticed the other bonded pairs from the Resistance had successfully infiltrated, disguised as maintenance workers. One pair, Torres and Kale, gave him an almost imperceptible nod as they worked on a nearby control panel. Through the bond, he felt Rhea's presence growing stronger. She had been brought aboard as well, though they were keeping her isolated in a high-security sector. Then, a ripple of tension passed through the station. Officers straightened. Guards snapped to attention. A massive dreadnought had docked, the personal vessel of Emperor Vex himself. Peter was brought to a large, circular chamber at the station's core, the main communications hub. Screens displayed fleet movements across dozens of sectors, and technicians worked feverishly at consoles, arranging data for their Emperor's review. And there, flanked by an elite guard in gleaming black armor, stood Emperor Vex Corrin. He was tall for a human, with aristocratic features and eyes that burned with fanatical intensity. His uniform was immaculate, adorned with medals and insignia of his own design. A partial mask covered the lower half of his face. A breathing apparatus, rumors said, necessitated by his constant exposure to harvested Valeth energy. Asset 7329, Vex said, his voice modulated through the mask into something cold and mechanical. My perfect hunter returns to its master. Peter kept his expression neutral, though inwardly he recoiled at being called it rather than he. I've discovered my purpose, he replied evenly. The Valeth female revealed things to me during our bond. Weaknesses in their defenses. Locations of their hidden bases. Vex circled him slowly, studying him like a specimen. And yet, the bond remains active. I can sense its energy signature. Curious that you would maintain such a connection if your allegiance has truly shifted. The bond gives me access to her knowledge, Peter explained. I thought it would be useful to you. Indeed. Vex stopped directly in front of him. Or perhaps you think to deceive me, to infiltrate this station and undermine my work. Before Peter could respond, Vex made a sharp gesture. Guards dragged Rhea into the chamber, her silver hair dull with exhaustion, but her eyes still defiant. Your bonded seems less cooperative than you, Vex observed. She has refused all attempts at interrogation. Rhea's gaze met Peter's, and through their bond flowed absolute resolve. The moment had come. Perhaps, Peter suggested, she would respond to more direct persuasion. He stepped toward a nearby console. May I? Vex hesitated, then nodded sharply. As Peter approached the console, he felt the subtle resonance of the devices Torres and Kale had planted throughout the station. They were ready, waiting only for his signal. He placed his hands on the interface, and immediately felt the system recognize his genetic code. Access protocols opened to him as if welcoming a long-lost administrator. This was what the Dominion had engineered him for, to interface with their systems on the deepest level. But instead of using that access as they intended, Peter initiated the sabotage sequence they'd planned at Last Haven. With a few commands, he began severing comlinks between Nexus Station and Dominion fleets across the galaxy. Simultaneously, Rhea channeled energy through her restraints, overloading them. They fell away, and before the guards could react, she had erected an energy barrier around herself and Peter. Alarms blared throughout the station. Vex's eyes widened in fury as he realized their deception. "Lock down all systems," he ordered. "Kill them both." But it was too late. The sabotage was cascading through the network, and outside, Resistance ships had dropped out of hyperspace, engaging the Dominion vessels that protected Nexus Station. The elite guards fired energy weapons at Rhea's barrier, but the shots were absorbed, strengthening rather than weakening the shield. Peter continued his work at the console, using his genetic access to broadcast Dominion command codes to Resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Vex himself drew a sidearm, advancing on them with cold rage. "You think this petty sabotage will stop the Dominion? We are eternal. We are order itself." "You're just one man," Peter replied, completing the final command sequence. "A man so afraid of difference that you would exterminate an entire race rather than understand them." With a roar of fury, Vex fired his weapon directly at Peter. Rhea's barrier flickered under the assault. The weapon was clearly designed specifically to counter Valeth energy. Peter felt the bond pulse between them, and in that moment, he understood what needed to be done. Drawing on Rhea's knowledge, flowing through their connection, he reached out with his mind, tapping into latent energy manipulation abilities the Dominion had built into his genetic structure, but never taught him to use. A surge of power flowed through him, directed at Vex's weapon. The device sparked, then exploded in the Emperor's hand, sending him staggering backward. His mask cracked from the blast, revealing the face beneath, human, but twisted with hate and obsession. Outside the communications hub, sounds of fighting echoed through the corridors. The other Resistance teams had begun their assault, targeting key systems throughout the station. Vex, recovering from the shock, lunged at Peter with surprising speed. "You were perfect," he snarled, hands closing around Peter's throat. "My greatest creation." "I'm not your creation," Peter gasped, struggling against the Emperor's grip. "My parents gave me life. You only tried to control it." Through their bond, Rhea channeled pure Veil energy into Peter. It flowed through him like liquid starlight, and with a surge of strength, he broke Vex's hold and pushed him back. Rhea stepped forward, her form shimmering as she drew on deeper reserves of power. "For all the Valeth you've murdered," she said, her voice resonating with the harmonics of her true form. "For all the bonds you've broken." Together, Peter and Rhea directed a focused burst of energy at Vex. It cracked his armor, revealing the network of tubes and implants beneath. Technology that had been harvesting and channeling stolen Valeth essence to extend his life, to grant him powers no human should possess. The Emperor collapsed, systems failing as the harvested energy turned against him. Around them, the station shuddered as Resistance forces gained the upper hand. Torres and Kale burst into the communications hub with a team of fighters. "It's done," Torres announced. "The codes are broadcasting. Dominion fleets across 3 sectors are in disarray. Many are standing down or turning on each other without central command." Peter looked down at the fallen Emperor. "And Vex?" "He will face justice before representatives of all the worlds he's subjugated," Kale replied, his deep voice somber. "A public trial to expose the truth of his atrocities." As Dominion officers surrendered throughout the station, word spread of Emperor Vex's capture. Without his iron control, the rigid Dominion hierarchy began to fracture. Some fleets withdrew to defensive positions, while others, long chafing under Vex's brutality, declared independence or pledged support to the resistance. In the days that followed, Peter and Rhea joined Seraphine in leading rescue missions to liberate hidden Valeth camps across multiple systems. Many of the captives had never believed freedom was possible, had resigned themselves to slow extinction. The human Valeth bond became a symbol of the new alliance forming from the ashes of the Dominion. Other species, long oppressed under Vex's rule, reached out to join the growing coalition. It wasn't perfect. Centuries of propaganda had left deep scars of mistrust and fear. Some former Dominion worlds refused to acknowledge Valeth rights. Remnants of Vex's forces continued guerrilla actions in distant sectors. But for the first time in generations, there was hope. 1 month after the fall of Nexus Station, Peter stood on the observation deck of the Auriga, watching a fleet of ships carry freed Valeth to new colonies established in uncharted regions. Rhea stood beside him, her silver hair floating gently in the ship's artificial gravity. "They're going to be safe now," Peter said quietly. "Thanks to you," Rhea replied. "Your compassion when you found me starving, that single act changed everything." Peter shook his head. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us, every bonded pair, every resistance fighter, every person who chose to see beyond fear." Through their bond, he felt her agreement and something more. A question, unasked but present in the warmth between them. "What will we do now?" he voiced it for her. Rhea turned to face him, her galaxy-deep eyes meeting his. "The bond is lifelong, but our path is ours to choose. Some pairs will help rebuild. Others will continue to fight remaining Dominion strongholds." "And us?" Peter asked. "I think," she said slowly, "that there are more starving wolves out there. More beings, human and alien alike, who need someone to show them compassion when all seems lost." Peter nodded, understanding flowing between them. "Explorers, then, looking for those who need help, building bridges between worlds." "It won't be easy," Rhea cautioned. "The galaxy is vast, and healing takes time." "We have time," Peter replied, reaching out to take her hand. Their fingers intertwined, and the bond pulsed strong between them. "And we have each other." Together, they turned back to the viewport as the Auriga's engines hummed to life. Beyond the glass, stars stretched into lines as they jumped to hyperspace, leaving a trail of iridescent energy, the symbol of human Valeth unity, lighting the dark, a beacon of hope for all who might see it. In the vastness of space, the legend would grow, of a human who fed a starving cosmic wolf, and how that single act of compassion changed the fate of galaxies. But for Peter and Rhea, bound by choice rather than design, the journey was just beginning.